Abby Choi was a fashion model and a Hong Kong socialite. You could see her partying with the elites of the world on social media. Rich, beautiful, and kind, Abby Choi had it all. She was well loved by everyone. She had the ideal lifestyle that many dreamed of. But all that came with a hefty price. Because jealousy can be deadly. She frequented Paris Fashion Week and has been featured in several high-profile fashion magazines. She was dubbed one of the most sought-after influencers in the fashion industry by L'Officiel. Abby was on her way to becoming a global fashion icon. But sadly, she would never see her full potential come to light, because her life ended too soon after it started. And the people who betrayed her were those who were supposed to love and protect her. Abby Choi was born on July 11, 1994, to a wealthy Hong Kong family. She was the eldest of 3 girls. Her father ran a very successful company in the construction industry in China. She was given the best of everything growing up, but she did not let it pollute her character. She was always kind, gentle, and loving. Never a spoiled child. In 2012, when Abby turned 18, she married her childhood sweetheart, Alex Kwong. Unlike her, Alex wasn't from a well-off family. He was not rich by any measure. He, by all accounts, did not have anything going on for him. But it did not bother Abby. She loved him nevertheless. After 4 years, in 2016, when Abby was just 22, she divorced Alex for reasons unknown to us. But it should not be surprising, as young marriages rarely last. The couple has 2 sons during 4 years of marriage. They are now 10 and 8 years old. Abby chose to keep Alex's family close to her after the divorce. You can see them posing with each other on Instagram a lot. They were still hanging out together frequently. It might have been difficult for Abby to declare no contact with her ex-family-in-law, as she practically grew up alongside them. In many of the posts, you can see her ex-husband, Alex, and ex-brother-in-law, Anthony, refer to her as their sister. This should point to how fond they were of her, despite the divorce. Since Alex's family was quite poor, Abby promised to take care of them after the split. Abby went as far as purchasing a luxury 4-bedroom condo in an upper-scale neighborhood in Hong Kong called Kadori Hill. The 1,800 square foot property was signed in her father-in-law's name, and it's valued at over 79 million Hong Kong dollars, or 10 million US dollars. Abby had purchased the property with her own money for her parents-in-laws. You'd think a slightly above-average condo would do, but Abby always went above and beyond for those who she cared for. Abby had made a name for herself in the fashion industry and become quite rich on her own. It's reported that she was worth around 100 million Hong Kong dollars, which is around 12.7 million US dollars. Abby also employed her ex-brother-in-law as her personal driver, since he was having trouble with unemployment. This would be a crucial detail for later. According to Hong Kong law, it was not Abby's responsibility to take care of her ex-family, but she did it anyway. That's just the kind of person she was. Abby was close to her ex-family-in-law. She would regularly send gifts to Jenny, her ex-mother-in-law, on every Mother's Day, and every year on Jenny's birthday. Abby would also take the entire Kwong family on vacation to exotic places every year, all of which was funded by her. Her father-in-law, Kao, reportedly treated her more like a daughter than a daughter-in-law. This account could be very biased, because things done to Abby were not things that one would do to a daughter. And if everything else was not enough, Abby also helped her ex-brother-in-law, Anthony, purchase his first and only property. Abby's family and friends described her as kind, caring, innocent, and generous. This is why what happened to her was so shocking. Just how could something this awful happen to someone so kind and innocent? In February 2023, Abby Choi was notified of an opportunity to model for the front cover of a well-known French magazine. She gladly accepted the offer and bought the plane ticket. She flew over to Paris, France for the photo shoot. Abby documented the whole thing for her followers. She was seen eating at Michelin star restaurants and hanging out with notable figures in the fashion industry. While Abby was living the high life, she had no idea just who was watching. and what they were planning on doing to her. On February 14, 2023, Abby posted one last photo to Instagram. It showed her on the cover of L'Officiel. Abby did not linger too long in Paris, as she was missing her kids and husband dearly, so she flew right back to Hong Kong. However, a few days after she got home, she suddenly and mysteriously vanished from the face of the earth, without a trace. On February 21, 2023, a missing person report was filed for Abby Choi when she failed to pick up her children from school. Police initially assumed that Abby had been abducted, as she was quite wealthy. They expected a call asking for ransom, but it never came. While they were waiting for the call, they combed through security footage of Abby's residence and nearby streets. In one security footage, they spotted her exiting the building where she last lived and entering a car. The driver? It was Abby's ex-brother-in-law, Anthony Kwong. The police, of course, invited Anthony for an interview. They also interviewed other Kwong family members. All of them gave consistent answers, and it was likely rehearsed. Although they did not accidentally reveal what they shouldn't have said, the police had a hunch that at least one of the Kwong family was involved with Abby's disappearance. The police asked to look at the Kwong family's phones. It's unknown what the police found on their phones, but they were able to track Abby's last known location to a flat in a seaside village. The flat was located 17 miles away from the last seen location of Abby. Alex, Anthony, and Kao's phones pinged at the flat during the time that Abby was missing. With these details divulged, the police were able to serve the Kwong a police warrant. On February 24th, the police went inside the residence in Taipo. It would be very difficult to live with what they had seen. As you enter the apartment unit, you would see the living room. The entire living room was covered with plastic covering. Authorities called it a kill room. The Kwong family had prepared the room in advance for Abby's arrival. No furniture was in sight, because they had removed it. All the walls and floor have been covered with plastic sheets. Police located Abby's missing luxurious pink handbag from Hermes inside the apartment. They found it in one of the rooms. Investigators also found meat grinders, chainsaws, a cleaver, and a hammer inside the apartment. It seems like the Kwong family was caught by surprise. They did not have time to dispose of the crucial evidence. Other things that they recovered include raincoats, gloves, and face shields, all splattered with a red substance. There was a refrigerator in the apartment. Police combed through its content. Inside the refrigerator, they found a pair of female legs. Next to the refrigerator was the stove. On the stove were several pots of soup containing some suspicious-looking meat, along with some vegetables as well. The meat was bagged and taken to a forensic lab for DNA analysis. It was determined to be human meat. Inside one pot, they discovered one skull, several ribs, and some human tissue. While some of the meat inside the pots were cooked, some were still fresh and uncooked. The DNA test also revealed that the meat was that of Abby Choi's. Abby had been turned into pots of human soup. She was just 28 years old. The Kwong family explained that they did not plan on eating the meat. It was just easier to conceal the smell, and easier to dispose of without raising suspicion. But why were the vegetables added? Analysis of the skull revealed a hole at the back of the skull. It may have rendered Abby immobile or unconscious. It's unknown whether Abby was still alive when they started. Police obtained CCTV footage from the flat taken on the night of Abby's disappearance. It showed a man walking into and out of view while carrying a box with a plastic covering on the inside of the box. The CCTV footage was too grainy to definitively pinpoint who the man was. Police believe that the box contained the missing pieces of Abby. This includes her hands and her torso. Since the police didn't know where the man had gone, they sent divers down into nearby lakes and had over 100 officers meticulously sift through nearby junkyards and cemeteries. So far, we haven't heard any updates on whether they found anything. With so much overwhelming evidence, there was no denying Kwong's involvement. Police visited the Kwong residence, and there they found Abby's ex-father-in-law, Kao, and her ex-brother-in-law, Anthony. They were promptly arrested and charged with Abby Choi's horrific murder. Abby's ex-mother-in-law, Jenny, was also arrested. Her phone did not ping at the apartment on the night that Abby went missing. However, she did help her husband and sons dispose of some of the evidence. It's believed that Jenny was not present during the slaying, although she knew of the plan. With 3 suspects arrested, there was still one person that the police still needed to arrest, and that was Abby's ex-husband, Alex Kwong. A citywide manhunt was issued, and the entire city was on high alert, as police combed through every crevice of the street, looking for Alex. At this point, Abby's murder was headline news all over Hong Kong. Abby had a lot of wealthy friends, and they used their wealth to aid Alex's arrest by offering huge sums of reward in exchange for Alex's known whereabouts. This tactic worked like a charm, because tips poured in. Alex was found on Lanao Island, while trying to flee Hong Kong in a speedboat. Police caught up with Alex and took him into custody. Alex had $500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash with him at the time of the arrest, as well as some luxury watches, which were all given as gifts from Abby. The watches altogether were worth around 4 million Hong Kong dollars. With the entire Kwong family under custody, investigators began to piece together what happened. It appeared that Cao Kwong was the person who plotted the whole thing. Cao was cheating on his wife with a 47-year-old woman. She had actually aided Cao's escape for a while, by hiding him in her apartment, after the murder took place. She was also in on the plot from the start. That's 5 people involved. But wait, there's more. Alex had hired someone else to help him escape, in return for 300,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is around 32,000 US dollars. The 7th co-conspirator was arrested 2 days ago. This 29-year-old woman was Alex Kwong's friend. She was in on the plan as well, right from the start. She helped Alex escape after the crime was committed, before fleeing to China. She was handed over to the Hong Kong Police Department. All of the people arrested were denied bail when requested. In total, 7 people were let in on the plot to abduct and end Abby Choi's life. None of them had any sense that what they were doing was wrong, and that perhaps they should inform the authority. It really wasn't like all of them had a personal grudge against Abby. The whole thing was instigated by Cao, and they just went along with it. Perhaps, to them, someone like Abby, who had everything, does not deserve any sympathy. Her having so much was enough reason to hate her and cash in on her death. This brings us to why. Why did Cao decide to plan out such an unspeakable act of evil? Abby was nothing but kind and generous to him and the entire Kwong family. She had gifted the Kwong family 2 beautiful kids, gifted them a $10 million luxury apartment, employed them when they needed money, helped them get over financial woes, paid for their bills, took them on exotic vacations, and shown them love as if she was their daughter and sister. What did Abby do to deserve this? This question was answered by the prosecutor, who stated that greed, entitlement, and immorality were the main drive behind the heinous crime. Abby had notified the Kwong family that she planned on selling the $10 million property. The news obviously wasn't received well by the Kwong family, who had been living there for years. Although the property was signed in Cao's name, Abby had the legal right to sell it, since she was the one who paid for it. Her reason to sell the property was mainly for investment purposes. Abby wasn't in financial hardship. Abby promised the Kwong family that she would purchase another home for them. But it did nothing to subdue the anger that the Kwong family felt. Cao had not paid a single penny for the home, but he still felt entitled to it. Leaving the home was not an option for him. He decided that if Abby was not around anymore, no one would be able to take the property away from him. Together with his 2 sons, they hatched a plan to take down Abby. The apartment was rented, while Abby was away in Paris doing her photo shoot. They prepared the room and waited for Abby's return, which did not take long, since Abby was a dutiful mother, eager to get home and see her kids. On February 21st, Abby had been back for several days. She messaged Anthony to pick her up, so they could make the drive to her daughter's school. Abby always picked up her kids on her own, even though she could have easily hired someone to do that for her. From the CCTV camera, you could see Abby looking at her phone as the car came to a stop. She may have been too distracted to notice the change in route. Or she may have noticed, but Anthony assured her with an excuse. Anthony drove Abby into a long, dark tunnel nearby. Police believe that's where Alex got into the car with the weapon. Alex struck the confused Abby once, in the back of her head, before Anthony drove them to the rented flat, 17 miles away. It must have been agonizing for Abby. As she laid there, wondering what her kindness and generosity had gotten her into. Because of her trusting nature, she'll never see her kids again. If she had just left her ex-husband in her past and moved on with her life, as most people would do, she would still be alive today. This is how kindness can get you killed. Fortunately, the police moved fast, and they connected the dots before all the evidence was disposed of. Perhaps it wouldn't surprise you to learn that the Kwong family had a history of not being the best people. Alex, Abby's ex-husband, had been on the wanted list since 2015. He had stolen millions of dollars in a gold scam. Anthony had been sued for failure to pay multiple debts. Kyle was accused of, well, we can't say that on YouTube, but he was forced to resign as a police officer after being accused. Jenny had filed for bankruptcy. While this doesn't make her a bad person, it did show that Jenny has had financial struggles at some point, and Abby had bailed her out of it. Abby's husband, Chris Tam, has declared that he would raise all 4 of Abby's children on his own, even the 2 eldest kids who were fathered by Alex Kwong. Here's what he had to say about his wife. She was a very kind person and always wanted to help people. I feel anyone who had a chance to be her family or her friend are blessed. Hong Kong has about 0.3 homicides per 100,000 residents, which is very low compared to the rest of the world. In fact, Hong Kong is one of the safest places, measured by homicide rate in the world. Some other places that made the list include Japan, Singapore, Luxembourg, Indonesia, Norway, Oman, and Switzerland. Compared with the more typical rate of 6.5 homicides per 100,000 residents, you can see why this case has made so much fuss in Hong Kong. Residents of Hong Kong are furious with the Kwong family. Comments on social media are flooded with angry people, calling the Kwong family demons and psychos. The brutal way in which they chose to end Abby's life was beyond evil. Ending someone's life is one thing, but dismembering their remain is a whole other thing. Not many people have the gut to do something like this to a human being. In Asian culture, a life for a life is a common way of looking at crimes like this. If you take someone's life on purpose, you must pay with your life. Locking someone so vile up, just to waste tax dollars, is not something many Hong Kongers want to do. Many people are calling for the death penalty. The death penalty is still being practiced in China, but since Hong Kong has a different system in place, it's possible that the Kwong family will not be sentenced to death. Instead, they will be sentenced to life in prison if convicted. The death penalty was abolished in Hong Kong in 1993. You have to ask yourself, what kind of people could do this to someone who has been nothing but kind to them? How evil do they have to be to sit around a table and plot a beautiful young woman's death when she had given them the world? She took care of them the best way she could and did not ask for anything in return. How could they sit there and cut into the flesh of someone who transformed their lives in such positive ways? Some people have a serious lack of empathy, compassion, and morals. It would be a disservice to all of humanity to call them humans. Kindness has a price when it's given to people who don't deserve it. It can make them entitled and resentful. Be careful what you share on social media. You never know who is watching.